I, Kedrick Ironclaw, reject this bond. The words shattered Mira before the entire pack. Her fated mate, the future alpha she'd loved in silence for years, publicly severed their bond and chose her sister instead. As Mira collapsed, choking on a pain no Omega should survive, the crowd erupted in cheers. But someone else was watching. A figure cloaked in war steel and darkness stepped from the shadows, eyes blazing molten gold, aura crackling with ancient power. The Lycan King had witnessed everything. And he looked furious. The moment Mira hit the ground, Azrian Bloodthorn crossed the clearing in 3 strides, knelt beside her trembling body, and whispered one word that would destroy everything the Ironclaw pack believed. Mine. If you believe no one should be humiliated for being different, subscribe to Shadow Moon Stories. Only cruel hearts like Kedrick's won't. The moon-binding grounds pulsed with something ancient and electric. The air tasted of frost-kissed pine, damp stone, and the iron tang of wolves preparing to shift. Magic crackled in the wind, threading through the carved stone totems that loomed like silent ancestors over the clearing. Hundreds of wolves gathered beneath the rising moon, their breath visible in the cold night air. Warriors stood at attention. Elders formed a half-circle near the ceremonial fire. Ranked wolves claimed the front rows, their postures radiating privilege and power. And at the very back, with the other Omegas, stood Mira Softveil. Her fingers twisted the coarse fabric of her plain dress, damp with nervous sweat. Tonight was the moonbinding. Tonight was her 18th birthday. Tonight, the silver thread she'd carried in silence for years would finally be spoken aloud. Her heart hammered so violently she thought it might crack through her ribs. The bond had been there since she was 16, a quiet hum beneath her skin, a whisper of destiny tethering her to Kedrick Ironclaw, the future alpha. The pack whispered about it in corners, in kitchens, behind closed doors. Everyone knew. Everyone waited. And for Mira, that bond was everything. It was the only thing that made surviving as an Omega bearable. The one fragile thread of hope that someday, tonight, she'd be more than invisible. Her gaze drifted forward, past rows of warriors and ranked wolves, landing on the figure who commanded every eye in the clearing. Leora. Her older sister stood among the elite in a forest green gown that shimmered like liquid emerald under the moonlight. Her dark hair was twisted into an intricate crown, her laughter loud and confident as she charmed the warriors surrounding her. She was radiant. Untouchable. Perfect. Behind her, their parents stood glowing with pride, their attention fixed entirely on Leora. They hadn't looked at Mira once. Not when she arrived. Not when she took her place among the Omegas. Not ever. Mira felt the familiar ache, the weight of being second best, of being nothing. But she swallowed it down. Tonight, rank wouldn't matter. Beauty wouldn't matter. Only fate. The Alpha, Kedrick's father, stepped forward, his massive frame casting shadows across the fire. He raised both hands, and the clearing fell silent as though the moon itself had commanded it. Tonight, his voice boomed, rolling across the crowd like thunder, we honor the moon goddess. We honor the sacred bonds she weaves between souls. We bind the future of the Ironclaw pack. A howl erupted from the warriors, deep, primal, shaking the earth beneath Mira's feet. The sound vibrated through her bones, igniting something wild and desperate in her chest. The moon climbed higher. A perfect silver disk. Stark. Blinding. Beautiful. And then, she felt it. The pull. It flared hot and urgent in her gut, a rope yanking her forward with a force that stole her breath. The bond wasn't whispering anymore. It was screaming. He was close. Kedrick was feeling it too. He stepped into the center of the clearing, and the crowd parted like water. Kedrick Ironclaw was everything an alpha should be, tall, broad-shouldered, carved from stone and dominance. His jaw was sharp enough to cut, his presence so commanding that wolves instinctively bowed as he passed. He was the future. He was power. And he was supposed to be hers. Mira's hands clenched into fists, nails biting into her palms. Her entire body trembled as his eyes swept across the crowd. See me. Please, goddess, let him see me. His gaze moved past the front ranks. Past the warriors. Past Leora, who watched with a knowing smile that made Myra's stomach twist. And then, his eyes locked on her. The world collapsed. The noise faded to nothing. The cold disappeared. It was just the two of them, connected by an invisible thread pulled so tight it burned through her chest. Myra. Her name. He'd spoken her name. Relief flooded her so violently she thought she'd drown in it. Joy surged through her veins like wildfire. He'd called her. Before the entire pack, before the goddess herself, he'd acknowledged the bond. Come. The command was absolute. Her legs trembled, but they obeyed. She pushed past the other Omegas, past wolves who whispered and stared. For the first time in her life, Myra Softveil held her head high. She was walking toward her destiny. Toward the bond the goddess had written into her soul. Toward a life where she'd finally matter. The crowd's energy shifted, unease rippling through the clearing like wind through tall grass. But Myra didn't notice. She didn't see the elders exchanging dark glances. Didn't catch Leora's victorious smirk. Didn't register the way her parents looked away. She only saw Kedrick. The moonlight struck her as she stepped into the center of the clearing, illuminating her simple dress, her trembling hands, her wide, hopeful eyes. And then she looked up. Really looked. Into his eyes. They weren't warm. They weren't filled with the love she'd imagined 1,000 times in her dreams. They were ice. Cold. Sharp. Disgust carved into every line of his face. Her steps faltered. Terror flashed through her chest. But she was already there. Already exposed. The entire pack watching, waiting, the silence so thick it pressed against her skin like a physical weight. Kedrick raised his hand. The clearing fell deathly silent. And in that moment, standing before the future Alpha with the moon burning silver above them, Myra realized with dawning horror that this wasn't going to be her happiest moment. It was going to be her destruction. If you stand against people who reject others for their rank or bloodline, subscribe now and comment what time you're watching this. Only those who side with cruelty like Kedrick's will scroll past. Kedrick's voice cut through the silence like a blade. I, Kedrick Ironclaw, reject this bond. The words hit Myra like a physical blow. Her breath caught. Her vision blurred. The moon goddess has erred, he continued, his tone dripping with venom. Myra Softveil is a mistake. A weak, invisible Omega unfit for the Alpha line. She is nothing. She will always be nothing. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Whispers slithered through the clearing like serpents. Someone laughed, a cruel, sharp sound that pierced through Myra's shock. She stood frozen, her mind refusing to process what was happening. This couldn't be real. The bond was real. She'd felt it for years. The goddess didn't make mistakes. But Kedrick's eyes told a different story. They were empty of everything except contempt. My heart, he announced, turning away from her as though she'd already ceased to exist, my Luna, is Leora. The world tilted. Leora stepped forward, her forest green gown flowing like water, her smile radiant and victorious. She moved with the grace of someone who'd known this moment was coming, who'd orchestrated every second of it. Kedrick wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her close. Leora leaned into him, her hand resting possessively on his chest. She looked beautiful. Powerful. Everything Myra wasn't. And then, Leora's gaze found Myra's. The smirk was unmistakable. The same smirk she'd worn since childhood whenever she'd taken something that belonged to Myra. Toys. Affection. Attention. Now, destiny itself. The bond inside Myra's chest twisted violently. Not a clean break, a tearing, a ripping, as though her soul was being shredded from the inside out. Pain exploded through her ribs, white-hot and unbearable. she gasped, clutching her chest, her knees buckling. The ground rushed up to meet her. Her palms hit the cold earth, fingers digging into the dirt as agony consumed her. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The spiritual wound burned like acid through her veins. The pack erupted in cheers. To the future Alpha and Luna, someone roared. Long live the Ironclaw line. Howls of celebration shook the clearing. Warriors raised their fists. Elders nodded approvingly. Her parents embraced Leora, tears of joy streaming down their faces. And Mira was on her hands and knees, gasping for air that wouldn't come, drowning in a pain that had no name. No one stopped cheering. No one came to help her. She was invisible again. Worse than invisible. She was discarded. Then, the cheering stopped. Not gradually. Not politely. It cut off like a severed scream. The temperature dropped. The fire flickered violently. Shadows stretched across the clearing, wrong and unnatural. An enormous figure moved at the forest's edge. Even the Alpha, Kedrick's father, went pale. His hand instinctively moved to the ceremonial blade at his waist, though he didn't draw it. He couldn't. No one could. Because the presence that emerged from the darkness wasn't something you fought. It was something you survived. Azrian Bloodthorn stepped into the moonlight. He was massive, taller than any wolf Mira had ever seen, his frame wrapped in warforged steel that gleamed like polished obsidian. A cloak of black fur draped across his shoulders, moving like living shadow. His armor was carved with ancient symbols that seemed to pulse with their own dark light. But it was his face that stole the breath from every wolf in the clearing. Sharp. Brutal. Beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful. And his eyes, molten gold, burning with something primal and ancient. He didn't look at Kedrick. Didn't acknowledge Leora. Didn't spare the elders a glance. His gaze was locked entirely on Mira. The Lycan King crossed the clearing in long, purposeful strides. Warriors stumbled backward. Elders bowed instinctively. Even Kedrick took an involuntary step back, his arm falling away from Leora. Azrian stopped beside Myra's crumpled form. For a moment, the only sound was her ragged breathing and the distant crackle of fire. Then, he knelt. The king of all Lycans knelt in the dirt beside a rejected Omega. He reached out, his hand massive and scarred, and tilted her chin up with a gentleness that didn't belong to someone who looked like war incarnate. Their eyes met. Myra's breath hitched. The pain in her chest, the unbearable, soul-deep agony, flickered. Dimmed. Something else surged in its place. Something golden and ancient and impossibly powerful. Azrian's eyes blazed brighter, his pupils dilating as though recognizing something the rest of the pack couldn't see. He rose slowly to his full, terrifying height, his presence expanding until it filled the entire clearing. The air itself seemed to bow to him. When he spoke, his voice was a growl that shook the earth. You have rejected the goddess's gift. Azrian's voice rumbled through the clearing like distant thunder, each word vibrating through bone and earth. You stand before the moon goddess and spit on her sacred decree. His golden eyes fixed on Kedrick with the intensity of a predator sizing up prey. You reject what she has woven. You call her bond a mistake. Kedrick's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, attempting to reclaim his authority. With all due respect, Your Majesty, this is an internal pack matter. The bond was weak, flawed. Silence. The single word cracked like a whip. The ground trembled. Literally trembled. Cracks spiderwebbed across the ceremonial stones. Wolves stumbled, grabbing onto each other for balance. The fire roared higher, flames twisting unnaturally. Kedrick's words died in his throat. His face drained of color. Azrian took a step forward. Just one. But the air pressure changed, became suffocating. You are a child playing at leadership. You know nothing of bonds. Nothing of destiny. And you dare lecture me about what is flawed? The Alpha, Kedrick's father, moved forward, hands raised in placation. King Bloodthorn, surely we can discuss. Azrian's gaze snapped to him. The Alpha's words shriveled. He bowed his head immediately, submission radiating from every line of his body. There is nothing to discuss, Azrian said, his tone absolute. Only consequences. He turned back to Mira, still crumpled on the ground, trembling and gasping. The gold in his eyes softened, just a fraction, but enough to be noticed. He extended his hand. Stand. It wasn't a command. It was an invitation. Mira stared at his hand, scarred, powerful, impossibly gentle, and something inside her stirred. Something that had nothing to do with Kedrick, nothing to do with the bond that had just been shredded. This was different. Her hand shook as she reached up. The moment their skin touched, electricity shot through her entire body. Not painful. Not burning. Awakening. Azrian pulled her to her feet effortlessly, steadying her with one hand at her waist. She stood before him, barely reaching his chest, her simple dress dirt-stained and torn. But when she looked up into his eyes, everything changed. A golden thread exploded into existence between them. Not silver like the bond with Kedrick. Not fragile or uncertain. This was molten. Ancient. Absolute. It slammed into her chest with the force of a tidal wave, driving the air from her lungs. Her knees buckled, but Azrian held her steady, his grip firm and grounding. What? She gasped, her voice barely a whisper. Azrian's eyes blazed brighter, his pupils expanding as he stared down at her. His jaw clenched. His breathing deepened. Recognition flared across his face, primal and possessive. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a growl meant only for her. Mine. The word detonated. A shockwave of pure golden energy exploded outward from where they stood, rippling across the clearing like a physical force. Wolves were thrown backward, hitting the ground hard. The fire roared and then bettered. Stone totems cracked. Mira gasped as the pain, the unbearable, soul-shredding agony of rejection, evaporated. Gone. Replaced by warmth that flooded her veins like liquid sunlight. Power hummed beneath her skin, unfamiliar and terrifying and right. Her vision sharpened. Her hearing intensified. She could feel every heartbeat in the clearing, every breath, every tremor of fear rippling through the pack. Azrian's hand remained at her waist, anchoring her as the power surged. His gaze never left hers. You feel it. I don't understand, Mira whispered, her voice trembling. What is this? Truth. His thumb brushed her cheek, a gesture so tender it didn't match the warrior standing before her. You were never meant for him. You carry something older. Something sealed. Sealed? Her mind raced, trying to process his words through the overwhelming sensations flooding her body. Azrian's expression darkened. His gaze swept over her, not in assessment but in recognition. Your bloodline. It predates wolves. Someone bound it when you were young. Hid what you are. I'm just an Omega, Mira breathed. No. His voice was absolute. You are far more. Whispers erupted through the crowd. Wolves pulled themselves from the ground, staring at Mira with expressions that ranged from terror to awe. She's cursed, someone hissed. The king claimed her. What is she? Did you see the light? Leora stood frozen, her triumphant smile cracked and crumbling. Her hands trembled at her sides. Kedrick stared at Mira as though seeing her for the first time, horror and dawning realization warring across his face. The elders huddled together, whispering frantically. One of them, an ancient she-wolf with silver hair, looked ill, her face ashen. Azrian's hand slid from Myra's waist to her hand, threading their fingers together. The golden bond pulsed between them, visible now as a faint shimmer in the moonlight. He turned toward the pack, his presence expanding until every wolf felt the weight of his authority pressing down on them. When he spoke, his voice carried the power of a king who'd ruled for centuries. Before the moon goddess and every soul gathered here, I claim Mira Softveil as my fated mate. Gasps. Leora's face twisted in fury. Kedrick stumbled backward. Azrian's grip on Myra's hand tightened. My chosen. The golden light around them intensified. My queen. The silence that followed Azrian's declaration was absolute. Not a wolf moved. Not a breath was taken. The words hung in the air like a sentence carved in stone. My queen. Myra's heart hammered against her ribs. Her mind spun, trying to grasp what was happening. An hour ago, she was nobody. A rejected Omega. A mistake. Now she stood beside the Lycan King, his hand wrapped around hers, golden light pulsing between them like a living thing. No. Kedrick's voice shattered the silence. He stepped forward, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. This is madness. She's nothing. She's yours to discard? Azrian's tone was glacial. A mistake of the goddess? Kedrick's jaw clenched. I am the future alpha of this pack. I chose my Luna. This Omega has no claim. She has every claim. Azrian's golden eyes blazed. The goddess wove her fate to mine long before you took your first breath. I reject that. Kedrick roared, his alpha dominance flaring. Several wolves whimpered at the pressure. I reject. He lunged. Azrian didn't move. Didn't flinch. He simply flicked his hand. An invisible force slammed into Kedrick like a battering ram, lifting him off his feet and hurling him backward. He hit the ground hard, the impact carving a trench in the dirt. He gasped, struggling to rise, but the weight pressing down on him was immovable. Stay. Down. Kedrick's body flattened against the earth. His face purpled with effort as he fought against the power holding him, but he couldn't move. Couldn't even lift his head. Terror flickered across his face. Azrian turned back to Mira, his expression softening immediately. He cupped her face with both hands, tilting her head up to meet his gaze. Do you feel it? He asked quietly, his voice meant only for her. The truth between us? Myra's breath caught. She did feel it. The golden thread binding them together was stronger than anything she'd ever known. Warmer. Deeper. It didn't just connect them, it completed something inside her she hadn't known was broken. But fear clawed at her chest. I don't understand. Kedrick was supposed to be a boy who couldn't see what stood before him, Azrian interrupted gently. The goddess doesn't make mistakes, Mira. She simply reveals truth when the time is right. But I'm just. You are mine. His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. And I am yours. Do you accept this bond? Her mind screamed that this was impossible. That she was dreaming. That she'd wake up still broken on the ground, rejected and alone. But the warmth flooding her veins was real. The power humming beneath her skin was real. He was real. Yes, she whispered. Azrian's eyes flared molten gold. A slow, predatory smile curved his lips. Then let no wolf here doubt what you are to me. He lowered his head to the curve of her neck. Myra's eyes widened. Wait, here? Now? Before them all, he murmured against her skin. So they remember. His teeth pierced the base of her neck. The world exploded in golden light. It erupted from where they stood, a sunrise captured in a single moment. The light was blinding, warm, impossibly beautiful. It washed over Mira like a baptism, searing away every moment of pain, every memory of invisibility, every wound carved by rejection. The bond snapped fully into place. Mira gasped, her knees buckling. Azrian caught her, holding her against his chest as power surged through her body in waves. She could feel him, not just physically, but spiritually. His strength. His certainty. His absolute conviction that she belonged to him. When the light finally faded, every wolf in the clearing was on their knees. Not from command. From instinct. The alpha bowed his head. The elders pressed their foreheads to the ground. Warriors trembled, unable to meet Azrian's gaze. The Ironclaw hierarchy collapsed in seconds. No! Leora's scream cut through the clearing. She stumbled forward, her beautiful face contorted with fury and desperation. This can't be happening. She's nobody. I'm supposed to be Luna. You are nothing. Azrian's voice was flat, disinterested. He didn't even look at her. Leora's confidence shattered. She spun toward Kedrick, still pinned to the ground, reaching for him with trembling hands. Kedrick, tell them. Tell them I'm your chosen. Kedrick couldn't speak. The pressure holding him down had stolen his breath, his voice, his authority. He could only stare at Mira with dawning horror, understanding finally what he'd thrown away. Leora collapsed to her knees, sobbing. Her parents rushed to her side, but even they looked shaken, their eyes darting between Mira and the king. Azrian turned, his arm wrapped protectively around Myra's waist. His gaze swept across the kneeling wolves with cold satisfaction. Remember this night, he commanded. Remember what happens when you reject the goddess's will. A sound rumbled from the forest. Deep. Rhythmic. Footsteps. Dozens of them. Shadows moved between the trees. Armor glinted in the moonlight. Warriors emerged from the darkness, Azrian's soldiers, clad in warforged steel and bearing the ancient sigils of the Lycan throne. They formed ranks at the clearing's edge, a wall of lethal power. The Ironclaw wolves pressed lower to the ground, trembling. Azrian's hand tightened on Myra's waist. Everything you've known ends tonight. If you can't stand people like Kedrick and Leora who manipulate and steal what isn't theirs, subscribe now and comment justice for Mira. Only those who side with betrayal will scroll past. Azrian's soldiers fanned out across the clearing, a silent wall of lethal authority. The Ironclaw wolves remained on their knees, heads bowed, terror radiating from every trembling body. The Lycan King's voice cut through the night like a blade. You have dishonored the moon goddess. Each word landed with the weight of judgment. You cast aside one of her chosen. You mocked sacred bonds. You allowed an ancient bloodline to suffer in obscurity. The Alpha, Kedrick's father, lifted his head, his voice shaking. Your Majesty, we didn't know. You didn't look. Azrian's golden eyes blazed. You saw an Omega and decided she was worthless. You never questioned why someone so powerless carried the scent of old magic. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Myra's head snapped toward Azrian. Old magic? He turned to her, his expression softening. You feel it awakening, don't you? She did. Power hummed beneath her skin, growing stronger with each passing moment. Images flickered at the edges of her mind, glimpses of places she'd never been, faces she didn't recognize, symbols carved in ancient stone. A woman with golden eyes, pressing a hand to child Mira's chest. Sleep, little one. Until it's time. Mira gasped, clutching Azrian's arm. Someone did something to me when I was young. A binding spell. Azrian's jaw clenched. Someone sealed your power. Made you weak. Kept you hidden. The elders exchanged panicked glances. One of them, the ancient she-wolf with silver hair, tried to rise, to flee. Azrian raised a hand. Invisible force slammed her back down. Explain. His voice was death itself. The elder trembled violently. We were ordered. By whom? I can't, the oath. By whom? The elder's resistance shattered. The bloodlines. The old families feared what she might become. Her mother's line carries, she choked, unable to continue. Myra's vision swam. Memories crashed through her mind like breaking waves. Her mother, young and radiant, fleeing through the forest. Elders surrounding a crying child. Magic burning through her veins, then fading, sealing, disappearing. They made me forget, Mira whispered, tears streaming down her face. They made me believe I was nothing. Azrian pulled her against his chest, his hand cradling the back of her head. You were never nothing. I knew. The voice was small, broken. Leora stood trembling, her beautiful face streaked with tears and rage. I knew she was different. When we were children, I saw her move things without touching them. I saw her eyes glow. Myra's head whipped toward her sister. What? I told father. Leora's voice cracked. I told him Mira was doing impossible things. That she was stronger than me. And I couldn't let her. You couldn't let her surpass you, Azrian finished, his tone venomous. So you helped them suppress her power. She was supposed to be beneath me. Leora screamed. I was supposed to be special. Not her. Never her. The clearing fell silent. Mira stared at her sister, this person who'd shared her blood, her home, her entire life, and felt nothing but hollow betrayal. You stole my life, Mira said quietly. You took everything I was supposed to be. Leora's face crumpled. I didn't have a choice. They said if I didn't help, they'd. Who? Azrian's voice cracked like thunder. Who ordered it? But Leora shook her head violently, pressing her hands over her mouth, unable or unwilling to speak the name. Mira. The broken voice came from behind them. Kedrick had finally managed to rise to his knees, though Azrian's power still pressed down on him. His face was ashen, his eyes wide with dawning horror. Mira, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know what you were. His voice fractured. If I had known. You would have what? Mira turned to face him, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. Claimed me? Loved me? Or would you have rejected me anyway because I was still just an Omega in your eyes? Kedrick flinched as though she'd struck him. I felt the bond for years, Mira continued. I believed the goddess chose us. I survived because of that hope. Her voice hardened. And you called me a mistake. I was wrong. Kedrick's voice broke. Please, Mira. I'm begging you. You don't get to beg. Azrian's voice was ice. You had a queen kneeling before you, and you chose a thief. Kedrick's gaze darted to Leora, and something fractured behind his eyes. The bond he'd claimed with her, already fragile, built on choice rather than destiny, cracked visibly. He could feel it. The wrongness of it. He'd rejected fate for ambition. And fate had judged him unworthy. Azrian turned to address the entire pack, his voice carrying absolute authority. Mira Softvale is under the protection of the Lycan throne. Any who harm her, dishonor her, or speak against her will answer to me personally. The wolves pressed their foreheads to the ground. Azrian removed his black fur cloak and draped it around Myra's shoulders. The weight of it was comforting, warm, smelling of cedar and steel and something wild. He leaned close, his lips brushing her ear. You are safe now. Then he addressed the pack one final time, his words a promise and a warning. The moon goddess will remember tonight. And so will I. If you despise people like Leora who sabotage others out of jealousy and insecurity, subscribe and comment. Everyone deserves their power. Only those who support tearing others down will walk away. Azrian's soldiers moved with silent precision, forming a protective circle around Mira. Their armor gleamed in the moonlight, ancient sigils carved into steel catching the fire's dying light. These were warriors who'd fought in wars older than memory, and now they stood guard over her. Over an Omega who was no longer an Omega at all. Mira stood at the center of their formation, Azrian's cloak heavy and warm around her shoulders. The golden bond hummed between them, steady and sure, anchoring her as the world she'd known crumbled around her. She turned slowly, taking in the Ironclaw pack one last time. Every wolf remained on their knees. Heads bowed. Bodies trembling. These were the wolves who'd mocked her. Ignored her. Treated her like a shadow not worth acknowledging. Now they couldn't even meet her eyes. The Alpha who'd allowed her suffering. The elders who'd stolen her power. The warriors who'd laughed when Kedrick rejected her. Her parents, who'd poured all their love into Leora and left nothing for her. All of them, broken before her. Azrian stepped closer, his presence a wall of warmth at her back. You don't have to say anything to them. But Mira found she wanted to. Needed to. She deserved this moment. I have something to say. Her voice rang clear across the clearing, stronger than it had ever been. Azrian's hand found hers, squeezing gently. Encouraging. Mira lifted her chin, meeting the eyes of wolves who'd never truly seen her. I was invisible to you. For 18 years, I existed in your shadows. I convinced myself that if I stayed quiet enough, small enough, maybe I'd be worth something. Her voice didn't waver. The power thrumming through her veins gave her courage she'd never known. Tonight, you saw what you threw away. Not just me, but the goddess's will. You rejected her gift because you couldn't see past rank and pride. She paused, letting the words sink in. I hope your eyes are finally open. Silence answered her. Heavy. Absolute. Leora remained crumpled on the ground, her beautiful face destroyed by tears and rage. Her forest green gown was dirt-stained, her carefully styled hair disheveled. She looked up at Mira with an expression twisted by envy and desperation. You're taking everything from me, Leora whispered brokenly. No. Mira's voice was soft but firm. You took everything from yourself. Leora's face crumpled further. She reached toward Kedrick, seeking comfort, but he didn't move. Couldn't move. Kedrick knelt in the dirt, his powerful frame bent under the weight of his catastrophic mistake. He finally forced himself to look at Mira, and what she saw in his eyes was complete devastation. He understood now. Truly understood what he'd rejected. Not just an Omega. Not just a bond. A queen. Mira, his voice cracked. But Mira had nothing left to give him. No forgiveness. No anger. Just empty space where her feelings for him used to be. She turned away. Azrian's hand slid to her waist, pulling her gently against his side. Are you ready? Mira looked up at him, this ancient king who'd appeared like vengeance incarnate and claimed her before the world. His golden eyes held warmth meant only for her, a tenderness that contrasted sharply with the lethal warrior everyone else saw. You're offering me a place at your side, she said quietly. As what, exactly? As my equal. His thumb brushed her cheek. As my fated mate. As the queen of the Lycan throne. He paused, his gaze intensifying. But only if you choose it. I will not force this bond, Mira. The choice is yours. The bond pulsed warm and golden between them, singing with rightness. With destiny. Mira had been rejected once tonight. Had her heart shattered before hundreds of witnesses. But this felt nothing like that fragile silver thread that bound her to Kedrick. This was fire and steel and ancient magic. This was fate unfolding exactly as it should. Yes. The word left her lips with absolute certainty. I choose this. I choose you. Azrian's expression transformed. Relief and possession and something fiercer flooded his features. He cupped her face with both hands and pressed his forehead to hers. Then let us leave this place. He adjusted the cloak around her shoulders, ensuring she was shielded from the cold night air. Then he turned her toward the forest, toward his waiting soldiers, toward a future she couldn't yet imagine. As they began to walk, the Ironclaw wolves remained frozen in submission. Mira took one step. Then another. Each step carried her further from the life that had tried to destroy her. Azrian's soldiers parted, creating a path. Their fists pressed to their chests in salute, not to their king, but to her. To their queen. Halfway across the clearing, Azrian stopped. He turned Mira gently, positioning himself behind her, his arms wrapping protectively around her waist. His chin rested atop her head as he faced the Ironclaw pack one final time. The message was unmistakable. She is mine. Under my protection. Anyone who harms her answers to me. Mira stood in his embrace, shaken but no longer broken. The moonlight painted her in silver and gold, transforming the simple Omega in a dirt-stained dress into something radiant. Something powerful. Something royal. The pack stared in awe and fear, finally seeing what had been hidden among them all along. Azrian's voice rumbled against Myra's back, a final declaration that echoed across the clearing. Remember her face. Remember this moment. And pray the goddess shows you more mercy than you showed her. Then they turned together and walked into the darkness, leaving the Ironclaw pack behind. Mira Softveil had entered the clearing as an Omega, invisible, rejected, broken. She left it as something far greater. The Lycan King's chosen queen. If you stand against systems that judge people by their rank instead of their worth, subscribe now and comment. True power can't be hidden forever. Only those who worship hierarchy over humanity will stay silent. Thank you so much for staying with me through Myra's journey. I know you felt every moment of her pain, her heartbreak, and finally, her triumph. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine while bringing it to you, then trust me when I say the next one will absolutely wreck you in the best way possible. It's even more intense, more emotional, and filled with twists you won't see coming. I promise you, you don't want to miss it. Click on the video showing on your screen right now and let's continue this journey together. Oh, and before you go, I realized something. We've spent all this time together, but I don't even know where you're watching from. Are you curled up in bed somewhere across the world? Sipping coffee in the early morning? I'd love to know. Drop your city or country in the comments and let me know you're here. Let's build this beautiful community together, because stories like Myra's deserve to be shared with souls who truly understand them. See you in the next one, love. Don't keep me waiting.